Hello and welcome to Leaders Lane. I'm your host, Monica Cade. Today, my guest is Dr. Laura Sicola. She's a leadership and communication and influence expert, speaker, and author of Speaking to Influence, Mastering Your Leadership Voice. Her mission is to transform executives into confident, inspiring leaders. And as a cognitive linguist by background, she's trained and coached executives at Fortune 500 companies and not-profit leaders. Laura has a TEDx talk, which is wonderful. I've watched it and I highly recommend you do. I will include it in the show notes so you can have a little giggle, but also learn some really insightful things about how you present yourself to the world. Called Want to Sound Like a Leader? Start by saying your name right. And it's got nearly 7 million views. So it's a goodie that you'll need to jump into. But today we're going to talk about mastering the 3 C's of executive presence: command the room, connect with the audience, and close the deal. So without further ado, let's welcome her to the conversation. Hi, Laura. Thank you for joining me.
Hi, Monica. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Well, you are a very interesting woman and you've accomplished so many incredible things. So to give our listeners a bit of a backstory into your world, how did your leadership journey begin?
You know, it's funny, we talked a little bit earlier about the overlap between a leadership journey and an entrepreneurial journey. And I am very much an accidental entrepreneur. I'm not from a business background. I did not originally have designs on creating my own business. I'm something of a recovering academic, as it were. I started as a teacher for a number of years and then moved into university life and was a professor. And that was my intended career path. And some opportunities came to do some consulting work, to do some training in corporate America, as it were. And I realized, okay, well, teaching and training are not different. Your students are different. Your content is a bit different, but it's still the same concept, the same skills. And it was exciting and it was autonomous and challenging and lucrative and all the things that you want a business to be. And so little by little, I evolved out of the more traditional educational contexts, hung out a shingle for myself, as it were, and learned about sort of little by little developed roots in the space of executive coaching, doing the one-on-one and really helping leaders to find their voice. You know, we've all had those moments where we're talking to someone and thinking, why don't you get it? It's so clear in my mind, the rationale, the purpose, the details, the explanation. Why don't you just accept what I say and life would be so much better? And when we all have that, don't we?
Yeah, we do, for sure.
And people in the business world have the same thing and they get frustrated because often they get to a certain point on the career ladder and then they hit what I like to call the linguistic glass ceiling. And that's where their technical expertise far outweighs their skill set in the leadership and the communication and those quote unquote soft skill areas, and they get stuck. So if they're going to break through to that next more senior level, they have to get those communication skills on par with their technical expertise. And that's where I end up stepping in and helping them find their voice, communicate their vision, translate their expertise so that everybody, no matter who it is, can see it, get on board, and get everybody rowing in the right direction to turn that vision into results. And that's really what we all want. So there's my long and short.
I love it. Can you tell me along that journey for yourself, did you have to learn to use your own voice or was it something that sort of came to you naturally?
To learn to use it differently. I think I've always been a confident speaker. I've always been a natural teacher at heart. So whether it's one-on-one or one-to-many or on a big stage or something, that was never the issue. But coming out of academia and, you know, I spent 12 years at the University of Pennsylvania. You know, they beat into my head how to think like an academic, write like an academic, talk like an academic, use as many 4, 5, 6 syllable words as you can find and figure out a way to jam into a sentence and give all the details and explain all the methodology and the rationale behind the methods. And the fact is, in business, no one cares about any of that stuff. So it was almost like, and I just wrote a blog about this week, as a matter of fact, that I felt like they were taking away my superhero cape, that I'd finally earned my cape. I'd earned the PhD, I'd earned the professorship role, I'd earned all this kind of stuff. And then when this new audience, they're going, yeah, we kind of don't care. We don't want Superman. Can you just send Clark Kent back in? And I went, why do you want Clark? What? That's So learning how to now take the medicine that I'm now preaching, so to speak, and say, okay, how do I take all this great knowledge that is what makes me special and qualified and technically competent and expert and all that kind of stuff and say, okay, but how do we get it into a bumper sticker? How do we get it
Mm,
into something that is super simple, crystal clear, strips away anything that's not just a here you go on a silver
mhm.
platter, nice and easy, smack you between the eyes, clear, move on. And that's
Yeah.
so I've had to learn to really shift what I do with my voice so that people can understand what I need them to hear in a way that they can hear it. And that was
Mm.
a bit of a learning curve for me. And so that's something that I'm now able to teach others how to do.
That's beautiful. It's something that, we talked about it just before we hit record as well. Like, I really work with a lot of my clients to do that in the written form, capture their brand into messaging that reflects who they are. Because it's one thing to, be all these things, like you said, but how do you put it on a bumper sticker? It's not always as easy as it could sometimes be quite clear in their mind, but then it's
Yes.
like articulating it, whether it's out loud or in the written form, it gets a little bit tricky.
Yes.
So what stage are clients at when they come to you to finding their voice?
Variety of different stages. Traditionally or typically, the majority of my clients are executives in more enterprise level corporations. So they are vice presidents, senior vice presidents, perhaps chief whatever officers of some sort or other, typically in the VP or SVP space where they are the technical experts, but they realize they are hitting a career plateau because they don't have the persuasive powers. They don't have the charisma. They don't have the ability to command the room. They don't have the ability to get all different kind of stakeholders on board with the vision. Maybe talking to people in their vertical. If you're a finance leader, you can talk to anyone below you in the finance accounting kind of space. Or if you're an IT leader, you can talk to anybody else who gets and loves technology, but you don't know how
Mm,
to talk to HR or to sales or to finance or to whoever else. And that won't cut it anymore. So when they need to be able to translate that expertise and to captivate an audience, not just drown them in technical detail, which nobody cares about at that level, that's where they get stuck. And that's when they come to me because they know it's going to be a career derailer if they don't catch up on that particular skill set and get as comfortable with those other audiences. Occasionally it's a smaller business owner, how small is really up to them, but where there's someone that I'm working with now who owns a spa, a health resort in Central America. And
mhm,
she realized that it's a family business that she inherited. She just is not, she loves the business. She loves her clients. She loves her people, but she's did not self-identify as a natural leader, more as a background. I'll help everybody, but I don't want to be in front. I don't want, and she realized for the company to grow, she was going to have to get over her fears, get used to being in the spotlight and getting used to really leading much more proactively, being comfortable addressing conflict, being comfortable talking to people about the business, not just doing the work behind the scenes. You have to be the face and the voice of the organization when you're a small business owner, not just the brains behind it. And that's a
mhm.
really big leap for people, especially if you're a natural introvert or just still figuring out exactly how to, what is your business, how to articulate it, that elevator pitch kind of thing. I hear a lot of people say, well, I don't really like to talk about myself. So, you tell me about you. How's anybody going to know about your business if you're going, oh, I don't want to talk about myself? You have to get
Yeah.
over that and it's not about arrogance versus humility. It's confidence. People want to do business with people who love what they do. Show me why you
Mhm.
love what you do. And then I'll be interested in exploring whether or not there's room for us to do business together. Don't just dismiss it or otherwise fire hose me with information where it sounds like you swallowed your website and are just going to regurgitate the whole thing to me. That you're going to lose me way too fast. So where's the happy medium in the middle that's captivating and engaging and makes people say, tell me more. That's where we want to get.
Beautiful. I can so relate to, I've had so many people say to me, like, oh, I don't really like talking about myself. I've heard that so many times, and I
Sure.
find it fascinating. And it's a very real thing. And I'm not, saying that it's something silly or that people, are making up. Like, it's a very real situation for
Yes.
people. What's like, if someone does say that to you, what's the first sort of way that you approach it with them?
The one thing to remember is it's my 4-word secret to confident public speaking. And my definition, by the way, of public speaking is simply anytime that you're talking to someone other than yourself. So this is a public speaking, you and me, just one-on-one. And of course, we're speaking to all of your audience and anybody else who happens to tune in, which is great. But it doesn't matter if it's one-to-one or one-to-many, it's public speaking. So it's the same in the networking conversations and the elevator pitches, et cetera. The 4-word secret to confident public speaking is simply, it's not about you. So people who are stuck in that, I don't like to talk about myself. No one's scrutinizing you. No one is sitting there like a cartoon high school English teacher with a red pen ready to drip blood all over your essay and nitpick every little detail and misplaced comma. That's not what
Yeah.
it's about. We like to do business with companies where we know, like, and trust the person. And if you're running a small business, you are your brand. And if you're telling me, well, I don't want you to know about me, I don't want to talk about myself, I don't want to let you in, then why would I give you my money? Why would I give you my business? I need to feel a connection with you because you want me to tell you all about me. So let me get this straight. You want me to put myself out there, to tell you all about myself, to be vulnerable to you and your possible criticism, but you won't do the same for me? That doesn't sound like a good, trusting relationship. You have to be generous. It's about generosity and providing value. If you don't believe that you will provide value to that person, why are you in business with them? Or why are you seeking to explore the possibility of doing business with them? It starts with relationships. You let me in, I let you in, and we build from there. So it's a little bit of a mindset shift, and that unlocks the door to all sorts of possibilities.
I love that you've highlighted that because often, I mean, I've seen in different places online and different people talking about confidence and, how to find that confidence. But in my experience, I find that when you're connected to yourself, when you love what you do, and when you're just there to connect with another person, you don't need the confidence. The confidence comes naturally. It's just part of who you are because you're talking about something you're passionate about. You're obviously qualified if you're there, trying to sell your business or any sort of like professional project or things like that. So I love that you've sort of highlighted that it's not so much about confidence is out there. For people that are listening, I've put my hand up and said like outside of ourselves.
Yes.
Yeah, I think that's very powerful.
Can I piggyback on that for 1 second?
For sure.
The what if it's hard to talk about yourself? Don't think about it as being, let me tell you about me, 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 me. What's most important in those moments is let me tell you why I love what I do. Because that's what people want to know. I mean, I have worked with a couple of accountants over the years who I've adored at various stages in the business development. And what I love most is how much they love what they do. The last person I want to work with is someone who feels about accounting the way I feel about accounting. That would be the
Yeah.
worst accountant possible. I would make the world's worst accountant. But so I don't, but there are many people who I've met, people I've trained and coached who are in the accounting space and they go, oh, I don't like to talk about myself because people think accounting is boring. So they're going to think
Yeah.
I'm boring. Only if you act like you think accounting is boring. I love talking to an accountant who gets all excited about if you get excited about taxes or about, I don't know, whatever spreadsheets or something, great. Don't give me too much detail about it, but just tell me why you love it. Because that's what makes me trust you and know that you're going to do a good job for me. I can't wait to hand my books over to you every month or quarter or year, as long as your passion drives you. That's what I want to know.
Totally. I couldn't agree more. I think it's just, it doesn't matter if like the profession. It's like if you're passionate
Right.
about what you're doing, like the other person can feel it. And I don't need to be passionate about what you're doing, but I can feel yours. And that just, like you said, it makes me feel like I can hand over my accounting to you and we'll, have a good trusting relationship.
Yes, yes. And you don't, I mean, for my work in executive coaching, I do a lot of work in public speaking coaching. A lot of clients who are coming to me for that kind of help, they're definitely not passionate about public speaking. They're terrified of it. They hate it. They know they need to do it to set themselves free and to be able to open up more doors for their own personal and professional journeys. So they are coming to me to rip the Band-Aid off, as it were. So, but they come to me because they can see, they know, they trust that I love it. I love
Mm.
being here and talking with you, Monica, and with your audience. I love being on stage and connecting with audience. And they look at how much fun I have when I'm doing it and how I love to connect with the audience. And they're thinking, I want a little bit of that. How do I get some of that? So they're coming to me for that reasons. And that's the same reason I go to the accountants that I go to, because they love what they do, not because I'm passionate about accounting. I will never be
Mm.
passionate about accounting. I don't care about, and I don't need to be, I just need to find someone who is, and that makes me happy.
Do you feel like the people that do come to you, when they go through their process with you, do you feel like they leave and they're just a little bit more excited about doing public speaking? Because I know public speaking for a lot of people is like, isn't there a statistic that says that's the second fear? Like, the first one is fear of death and the other one is fear of public speaking.
Yeah, I
The
think it's
top
actually
fears in
the
the world.
opposite, which is ironic,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
That public speaking is the most common fear, even above the fear of death.
Yeah.
The 4 out of 5 people or something, but that there's an old quote from the comedian Jerry Seinfeld, if you remember him, but that he had said, so if that's the case, then that means that at any given funeral, 4 out of 5 people would rather be in the coffin than giving the eulogy.
That's good. I haven't heard that, but
Yeah. So
yeah.
that was, and that is the case. So to answer your question though, yes, absolutely. I just worked recently with someone for about 6 months, and she had just taken a new senior director position at a very large global finance asset management company. And she said, I'm going to have to do some speaking like at weekly meetings and internal presentations with more senior leadership. And she goes, I hate being in the spotlight in those moments. I just want to not hate it. That was her goal coming into it. I just want to not hate it. I said, well, I think we can aim a little higher than that. And when we got done, by the time we were done with those 6 months, I said, did we at least meet, if not beat that goal that we had set? And she said, Laura, if you had told me 6 months ago that I'd be where I am now, I would never believe you, because I don't just not hate public speaking. I love it. I can't wait to be on podcasts. I love getting to go and speak at conferences and be on panels. And she said, the funny thing is, my boss also hates public speaking, but he gets asked to do it all the time. And when he does, he just kicks it over to me. He's like, you go take care of it. And I can't wait for those opportunities. I have so much fun and I absolutely love it. And I love the feedback that I get because I know I can nail it. And so that's the results that I love to get with people, because it's 75% of it is mindset shift and the rest is technique.
If 75% is mindset shift, to me,
Yes.
that's like so empowering. I feel like even for our listeners that could go, oh, okay, if only that's most of it's like, it just needs to change up here.
Yes.
What are some of the other thoughts, if there are others, then, I don't like talking about myself? What are some of the things that you've seen in terms of mindset?
An important one that goes along with that is the concept of be the speaker that you'd want to listen to. Put yourself in their shoes. Would you want to hear someone, if you're in a networking event, who's like, no, I don't want to talk about myself. You tell me about you. No, you don't want to talk to that person. Well, neither does anybody else. Or if you are on stage, let's say you're giving a lunch and learn, or you've been invited to give a little talk at the local chamber of commerce. You have 15 minutes to describe whatever your talk is. Well, if you were sitting in that audience, what would give you value? Because here's a trick, not a trick so much, but a little bit of insight, is realizing that no matter what the format, whether it's on a podcast, on a conference stage, at a chamber of commerce meeting, any other space like that, all audiences are tuned into the same radio station, WIFM. What's in it for me? They're not going in there to say, okay, and I'm gonna ask everybody who's listening out there, do a little mental audit of yourself. When you clicked play on this episode, was your conscious or unconscious mindset, all right, let's see who Monica brought in this time. Let's see if she's a fraud. Let's see if she's a giant windbag and a total waste of time. And if Monica was ridiculously foolish in bringing me in, let's see if this is going to be a totally useless. No, of course not, right? Chances are you tuned in because you went, I love Monica's show. I trust that she is going to bring in another great guest because I always love the stories they tell. And this person seems to be focused on leadership communication and I could use some help with that, boy, I hope I get some good tips. I hope the stories are interesting. I hope the time goes by fast. I hope I get some great tips that are going to help me launch quickly and make some fast progress. What is the likelihood that that's more how you tuned in? That was the mental gravitation that you had. What do you think, Monica? Which are most of your listeners tuning in with?
I think I think that's exactly how they would have jumped in, thinking, what could I learn here? What tips can I get from Laura? Can I apply these to my life? Can I make my world better by tuning in? For sure. That's my process when I tune into a podcast or listen to someone else. I think, oh, like, what could I learn here? How could I improve, my speaking, my presenting, my writing, whatever it is that I'm listening to? I think naturally we tune into things that we want to learn more about, either our business, ourselves, something that's going to improve our general outlook.
Absolutely. And think about it this way, with podcasts, with conferences, with networking events, no one has to go. No one has to tune in. They tune in because they want to. There are 75 million other things they could be doing with their time, other shows they could tune into, other events they could attend, other people they could go out to meet. But they've chosen you. They've chosen this event. They've chosen this moment. Why? Because they staked their bet and they're going in with the belief, the hope, the trust that this will be the best use of their time, the most valuable investment of their time with the best potential return on that investment, the best value. So our job as speakers, as presenters, as hosts and guests is simply to serve that request, that we give them something of value. And so I know, in coming and talking to your audience and understanding your show, the kinds of things to help business leaders, new business owners, entrepreneurs at various stages, what's going to help you find your voice? What's going to help you go from a great website to maybe a great video on your website, a 30-second little connection video. So someone who goes to your website because you have great social media. Okay, well, now you click and they go, oh, well, that's interesting. Now I've met Monica. Oh, now I like her even more. Now I'm really curious to tune in and see what she does, because it's something to help you find the voice. I know all of the clients that I've worked with, what they struggle with. So I'm going to go out on a limb and assume that a good number of people in your listener audience also have some of those same challenges. Well, let me offer value, because if I can help you set free from any of them in the next 15, 20, 25 minutes, then I believe that I have given value. And that is my goal, is to help everyone else out there set themselves free and go, that was an awesome 30 minutes. I'm so glad I tuned into Monica's show again. Not, well, that's 30 minutes I'll never get back.
Yes, totally. I love that you say that, because I often think whenever I'm sharing content or writing things, or I appreciate when someone has taken time to create something and then I read it and then it's impacted me. And I didn't know that it was going to impact me that day. And that person creating that piece of content maybe didn't know, but it did. And it transformed me in some way and impacted my life in some way. And I think that's the importance of finding your voice. It's not necessarily to just go out there and do that thing because you have to go and do that speaking event for whatever reason. But it's a deeper thing, which circles back to what we were saying before. Like, when you love what you do, that comes through.
Yes. Help people understand why you love what you do. You love what you do because of the value that you believe you can provide to somebody else, how you can make somebody's life a little bit better. Help me understand that.
Yeah, exactly. Well, let's talk about the 3 Cs. Now, I think these were really interesting. So do you want to just kick off and tell us how you came to the 3 Cs?
Sure. In the space of executive presence, which is really what the majority of my clients are looking to enhance, and communication is the root. And you can change the label, whether it's executive presence, leadership presence, command presence, and whether you're leading a team of 1 or a team of 1,000, doesn't matter. So, but in that space, there are really 3 things that everyone wants to do. And those have become my 3 Cs. And that's the ability to, number 1, command the room. Number 2, connect with the audience. And number 3, close the deal. So if we break that down just briefly, to command the room means from the minute you show up, whether it's here on this nice little screen or whether it is in a room, in the front of the room, at a podium or otherwise. There's something about you that just compels people to pay attention, to notice, not in a look at me kind of sense, but certainly not in the don't look at me, don't look at me sense. So how do you show up in a way? There's a difference between commanding respect and demanding respect, commanding attention and demanding attention. If you have to demand it, you'll never command it. So that's part of how you show up that makes people just curious and notice, wanting to learn more. That's the commanding the room or the screen, as the case may be. Number two, connecting with the audience. Once you start talking with them, no matter who they are, no matter what their walk of life, how different your life journeys may have been, on some level, some relevant level, you've established the connection that says, you understand me and I understand you. And that's where we're going to move forward in this conversation. And then number three is to close the deal. Now, for those of us who are business owners, sure, we think about it more literally in terms of signing on the dotted line, having the contract, exchange of goods or services, et cetera. But more broadly, the concept of closing the deal means agreement formation, means getting to yes. And it can be just moving the needle forward. Maybe you're in a slightly heated conversation with somebody and you say, you know what, let's go get lunch. Let's just come back with fuller bellies and having exhaled a little bit, get some fresh air, and then let's start over again. And if they agree to that, you've closed that deal. Put a pause, move the needle forward, and you know you'll make better progress an hour or two from now than the impasse that you have currently hit. Maybe it's, but for companies like mine, when I'm working with mega enterprise level organizations, there's no deal that is closed. There's no contract that's signed after one conversation. It might be 6 months or longer where we have to have multiple conversations, emails back and forth, different drafts and revisions of statements of work and work orders and all of those kinds of things. Okay. But with each of those stages, each time we get a yes, let's progress, let's proceed to the next stage, stage 42 out of 263 possibly, but that's closing the next deal. It's moving the needle forward. Yes by yes. That's closing the deal.
So, and I loved how you touched on the difference between like commanding and demanding.
Yes.
So let's start with that one. Our listeners are like, okay, well, tell me, how do I do step one, commanding the room? What's one thing that they could implement today and how to do that?
Commanding the room can be anything from how you dress to your body language before you even open your mouth. If you are there to command the room, to lead something, but you've dressed in just nothing but neutrals and your clothes say to you, I don't want to command attention. I don't want people looking at me. It's a little oversized. Maybe it doesn't fit very well. I'm hiding. Maybe I put on a little bit of weight and I'm conscious of my physique. So I'm trying to hide myself. Your body language is saying, I want to hide, as opposed to, I'm happy to be here. So perhaps think about the colors that you wear. Are they your brand colors? Are they colors that go really well with your color palette? I was semi-facetiously joking that for whatever reason on my camera, my good camera is not working today. So I'm on my embedded one. I look oddly yellow. I don't know why I look this yellow, but I do. Okay. So does the color palette work? Hard to tell here, but under normal circumstances, does the color make it look like you want to talk to other people? How formal is it? How informal is it? Does it meet the moment? What is your posture saying? Where do you sit? Do you sit at the front of the room, at the head of the table? Do you sit along the side, kind of hiding? Do you sit in the back corner and wait to be addressed? Where do you position yourself? Do you initiate conversations with people, or do you stand there and go, I don't want to talk to somebody? If somebody talks to me, then okay, but I won't go up and introduce myself. Again, I'm putting the onus on someone else to take the risk to put themselves out there and approach me, but I won't give them the generosity because maybe they're sitting there too thinking, well, I don't like introducing myself. I'm nervous. I don't like talking to strangers, but I'm going to make them do the work. Let me take the initiative. At least 50% of the people in that room are dying for you to come up and introduce yourselves to them. And if they're not one of those, they're still happy that you did it because they want to talk to you anyway. So, those little things can be about commanding the room, just walking up to someone and saying, hi, I'm Laura. What brings you here today? That simple. Does not need to be complicated. We overthink things. Anybody out there overthinking? Anybody an overthinker? I think a lot of us wear that like a badge of honor on our sleeves. So just keep it simple and connect with, make that introduction for the connection that commands the room itself. Even things like, I emceed an event not long ago for, it was a fundraiser for a nonprofit, and there are, I don't know, probably 200 people or so. And when there's a lot of networking in the beginning, and when it was time to start the event, I went up to the podium and I called for attention and asked people to kind of come and gather and get in their seats so that we could start. And I just paused there for a minute, stood at the podium. I was quiet, allowed people to move along, smiling, just acknowledging people bit by bit. And they filtered on in. I made one or two other little comments just as people were getting into their seats, but that was about it. And when the event was done, I spoke, I connected with the president of the organization and I said, how did you feel it went? And she said, that was masterful. And I mean, not just the event, but like in the beginning, you told people to come and sit down and be quiet, and they did it. I've never seen that before. And that was the funniest thing, because I was running the event all night doing all sorts of other things, but that was what just flabbergasted her from the beginning, just to stand there, have the presence, make the request, and the presence was enough to get people to say, okay, and compel. Now, they didn't bolt to the seats, but it came. And she said it was about the presence more than anything else. So you don't have to be an extrovert. You don't have to be loud. You don't have to be gregarious and moving around. You can be quiet and soft-spoken, but still authoritative and still compelling, still commanding without having to be demanding. And when you can find that inner strength and convey it, there's massive amounts of power and trust and credibility that comes from that as well. It's not just about being loud.
I love that you said that. Can you tell me, how does using our voice come into commanding the room?
Sure, you have to sound like you mean it when you say it, whatever the it is. If I were to get up there and be just in that same example that I mentioned a moment ago, if I'd gotten up to the podium and said, everybody, we would like to start the event soon. So could everybody please come in? Sorry, I'm really sorry to interrupt the conversations. Sorry. Could people please come in? It sounds like I'm afraid of them. No one's going to take me seriously because I don't sound like I take myself seriously. Again, I'm not demanding. It's not a power struggle. It's an invitation. So things like, are you able to use declarative tone in your voice, where at the end of a sentence, does your sentence end, or is it a run-on, number one? Is it a stream of consciousness that sounds a little flailing? Or do you make a statement and at the end have a vocal period, as opposed to that upspeak where it sounds like you're asking questions at the ends of all your phrases and sentences? If you're not looking at the video where I've got my finger rising, if you can hear it, it's going up over and over again. That sounds like I'm begging for affirmation and validation. Like, is it okay? Do you know what I mean? Am I right? Okay. Well, that's giving away my power. It sounds like I'm afraid of you, that I need you to say, yes, Laura, I know, Laura, you're right, Laura. It's okay, Laura. Okay, pat on the head. You can go now. You're done. It's okay. I have approved what you've done. That you give away your power when you do those kinds of things. You have to sound in your delivery like you love what you do, like you believe in what you do, like you're excited to talk to people and share value with them, not just ask if it's okay. So that what you say and how you say it are equally important.
It's interesting, and I was smiling to myself because I remember when I first started my podcast, and then the very first one I did, it was like so many years ago, and then I listened to it back. And so I had, as a teenager and stuff, I took a lot of acting and presenting classes. So I had a good sort of like some training behind me. But anyway, I listened back to it and I just wrote down all the words that I said repetitively. Like, I don't know what else there was, but there was certain words and phrases that I was using, but I could see that they weren't creating a strong presence for
Yes.
myself. Even now I notice that, like, when I listen back to things, the one at the moment that's been sneaking in there has been, and I find it just interesting because it's like, well, why do I continue saying that word? And I understand in conversation, it's like, it can be including the other person in or getting them to jump in and things like that. But when it's something that keeps recurring, it's interesting how when you look at language, you can learn so much about yourself as well.
Yes, you are 100% right. And to your point, there are phrases that have function. And then there are times when those same phrases lose their function and then they become fillers. So if there is a moment when you legitimately are seeking confirmation or checking comprehension from the audience, and you say, and you pause and allow them to answer, then you're seeking confirmation and those words have semantic value to them. But if it becomes a version of where you say, if you want to do this and, you could do, this other thing. So then it's going to be, that's not seeking confirmation. That's just your version of so
Exactly.
we have to recognize which pattern. It's not that the word itself or the phrase itself is bad, but what function is it taking? And is it one that is facilitating our intention in this conversation? Or is it just totally undermining our purpose and our credibility? It's an important point of distinction.
Yeah, I love that. And I'm just thinking about it sort of subtly in my mind for myself. And I think, oh, that's a great way. You've explained it so beautifully. Like, is it serve as a function or not? And I think it's a very easy thing for anyone listening to go, oh, okay, well, these are the words that I sort of use as filler words. Why do I do that? Or is it a function or is it just detracting from the conversation?
I find also that, and many of your audience members may relate to this as well, often those who are very highly educated, highly experienced professionals may use what I like to call educated fillers. And those are the polysyllabic words that have also lost their function. So if you preface things like actually or basically at the beginning of explanations, then you're going, it's not basic what you're explaining. You're going into massive amounts of technical detail. And actually is what's the purpose of putting that word there? Is it legitimately a surprise or a contradiction that you're about to share? Or is it just how you want to start your sentence? Where would you not be telling me something that's actual? Is there a reason you needed to state that it is an actual fact? Probably not. So are you using those educated fillers that are equally useless or not? So just being able to audit our own speech and recognize, gee, when I'm in my professional mode or I'm in this mode or that mode, do I suddenly find myself using these words that I otherwise would not use? It's enlightening, if not pleasant, to recognize those patterns in ourselves sometimes.
Totally. I find it so interesting just listening to you. I'm sort of smiling to myself for anyone that can't see me as well. And I think it can be fun, I think the way that you talk about it, you make it really fun where you can look at yourself and how you communicate and go, okay, I can improve. And this is the way that I can improve because I'm noticing this about myself. And I think that's what's really lovely about your approach. You're making it like it's not a problem. It's not a big deal. These are the things, these are the areas you can improve. And I guess that comes down to because you can tell you're really passionate about what you do. And so then that is then transferred to whoever you're working with.
I'm so glad that comes through because it's 100% true. And I think part of leadership is practicing what you preach. So if it's coming through to you that I love what I do and I really do want this to be the best possible 45-minute experience that we could together give to your listeners, then my mission is accomplished and I'm thrilled to have been part of this journey with you. And that's what I'm hoping that others who are listening will see and go, oh, yeah, that does make a difference. Okay, how can I then find my own passion and find a way to express my own passion in a way that's authentic? I'm not trying to be Laura. I'm not trying to be Monica. I just want to be me in my whatever practice, but so that people see that I love what I do. And all I want to do is give them value. I think if they can figure out a way to do that, then everything else falls into place.
Tell me, how do we connect with the audience? Do you have any little tips that can be something people could tuck away into their pocket today?
But it's just remembering that everyone's human and everyone has some challenges. Everyone wants to be physically healthy, professionally healthy, interpersonally healthy. So if nothing else, when you think about the kinds of problems that you help people solve and just speak in those terms, or the value that you love to give to people, keeping it simple is often the easiest way to make those connections. So I may start when I may be at an event where I'm not talking to corporate executives. I may be talking to people who are not even in the workforce right now. So if they ask what I do, I might start with something like, did you ever have one of those moments where you're talking and you suddenly think to yourself, that sounded better in my head? Well, I fixed that. That's my job. And even though, so the person, most people will respond when I ask that question the same way that you did, kind of a smile,
Yeah.
a nod, a little giggle, because you're going, yeah, I've been there at least twice in the last 24 hours, and one personal, one professional. And so it's a very simple way to connect on a very human experience. It's not about if you're a vice president, if you work in corporate XYZ, if you do no, it's just, this is the kind of thing that I help people past. And then they might say, well, how do you do that? Or in what way? Or they just want to tell me about the time. Maybe they don't even ask. Maybe that's the last thing that I say that's about me. And then they go, oh boy, let me tell you about what happened with me and my brother yesterday when I was having this conversation, or with my wife, or with my this or my that. And then whoop, they just went right down a rabbit hole because I brought up a very simple point. So whether you're in accounting, or whether you're in uh, personal fitness, or you're in dog walking or something, asking a question about to the person about what's likely a very relatable experience, and then finding a way to connect that to what you do, it can be a very fast way to just establish that connection, because it's about them. Especially for those,
Mm.
remember we talked before about those who are like, oh, I don't like to talk about myself. All right, well, ask them a
Yeah.
question that connects to what you do. And then if they just go off on a tangent talking about themselves, great, you're off the hook. Eventually they may bring it back to you and say, so wait, how do you fix this? What do you do about that? And then you can be more specific. Well, it's in this way. But if you notice, I didn't say anything about executive coaching. I didn't say anything about public speaking. I didn't say anything about trainings, or what I do virtually, or conference speaking, or the kinds of packages I run, or the kinds of clients that I have. It was a very simple, very generic question. And all I said was, I fix that. 3 syllables, as unacademic, untechnical, uber relatable as possible. And if they go, interesting, how? Great, I'll tell you. If you don't ask, I won't. Let's see where you take the conversation. So keep your introduction super simple and relatable. Start with that question and let them lead from there.
It just, and you touched on this before, you're saying, remember that people are humans, the other person you're talking to is human. And I think sometimes we can forget that, especially
Yes.
when whether if we're intimidated by somebody else, or if we think, oh my God, they're so impressive. And then, we shrink, or just in general, like we don't like making that first move and starting that conversation. I think remembering that the other person still has those feelings, and that when you can find that little point that to relate over, it's like everyone just goes, oh, okay, they're human, I'm human. We're just going
Yes.
to connect over something right now. And I find that that's exactly what happens. It just sort of relaxes the room.
Yeah. And those often who are in positions of high power and whatever else, depending on the context, of course, yes, if you're calling them during the work hours, then you have to respect their time and etc. But often when they're not in their particular role of sorts, they just want to be normal. They don't want people focusing on their position, their title, their this, their that. They just want to enjoy the conversation. And all of my podcast guests, I ran mine it just wrapped up a few months ago, but I ran it for over 4 years and 200 something episodes. And all of my guests were senior executives in those kinds of companies. And in the beginning, I was really intimidated. I was afraid to ask anyone, and going, who am I? They don't know me from Eve. Why would they want to give me an hour of their time? And after a while, I started to understand their philosophy differently, and shift the kind of experience I was giving them, to the point where even we would have a prep call and we'd look at their tech. And if they didn't have a good microphone, I would tell them right off the bat. So, okay, we can't record until you upgrade your mic. No, you cannot use your AirPods. No, you cannot use the microphone that's embedded in your computer. No, you cannot use these kinds of things because I'm going to use this microphone. I'm going to use this Lamborghini. I'm going to sound crystal clear, and you cannot afford to sound like this because that'll undermine your value. That'll undermine your reputation. I would never do that to your brand. So here's a list of equipment pieces that I would recommend. Pick one off my list or pick your own, but let me know when you've got a new one, and then we'll schedule the date for the recording. And I actually had one person who was part of a leadership team in an insurance company. And what got back to me later on, as I spoke to his assistant who was getting him all set up with that kind of stuff, she said, yeah, after you got off the prep call with him, he said, she corrected me. No one corrects me. I kind of liked it. And I just burst out laughing. But it's like, my job is to elevate your brand by having you on the show. I want to give you an amazing experience. I can't elevate your brand if I allow you on and know that you're going to sound terrible when I'm going to sound this crystal clear. So it's me stepping in as a little bit of a loving kick in the pants, but understanding that I'm here to guide you. My whole job is about elevating your brand as a leader. How could I just ignore the detail of your microphone quality on my show? So we're going to start right away with me giving you value before we hit record. So it's all about recognizing who's your audience and how do you give them the money, the value that is. But it starts with having the confidence to tell them your truth and not just kowtowing.
Thank you for sharing. Thank you for sharing that story. It was wonderful. And I love that you did that. And I love that that particular guest was just a little bit chuffed by the fact that you did correct him. And I think it's a beautiful example of just, it shows me how much you care. And I know that that's what he would have perceived as well. So I think that's another little just example of everyday situations when you can support someone else to elevate their brand. Whether it was, for you, it was with a podcast, but there might be another situation. Someone has a business owner or someone in a company, where they can just contribute and connect with their audience in that way.
Yes. Yes. And it's about consistency in branding. So if he knows that I'm telling him that I'm an executive coach, then I have to be able to tell you things that you may not want to hear, but that you need to hear. If I'm just going to tell you what you want to hear on the podcast and not help you, then why would you hire me afterwards? Why would you trust me? This is you kicking the tires. This is you taking this for a test drive to see, what kind of value did I get out of that conversation? Do I want to have another one? Or was this just a waste of my time? Is she going to be afraid of me because of my role? Well, if so, then how do I know that she's going to not be afraid of me if I hire her? Because I'm still in this role. So it's really brand consistency. That's also where the trust comes from. So I have to be able to stand up to my guests from I'm doing this in service of you, not in criticism of you, and not in fear of you, in service of you. And if they get it, great. And if they don't, good, we're not a good match.
I feel like it's also a very clear example of embodying that executive presence. I know you said you can use that interchangeably,
Yes.
but to me, that shows that you've embodied your presence.
Yes.
And I just think that that's the type of person I would want to work with. If I'm wanting to do that for myself, then I want to work with someone that does that for themselves too. Like, it wouldn't be a very good partnership if I came into this and you were like, okay, Monica, and you didn't give me any eye contact, but looking down at the floor, and I'd be like, where am I going to end up after this?
Exactly. 100%.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, our interview is coming to a close, but I'd love to know, is there any really burning wisdom that you have to share that I haven't touched on just yet?
Burning wisdom. I think what is most important is simply recognizing that authenticity, A, is essential to credibility, and B, is not a black and white construct. It's not, this is me, that's not me. Well, Laura, you're asking me to step out of my comfort zone and go introduce myself to somebody, and that's not me. That is not the definition of authenticity. That is the definition of comfort zone. And growth, by any definition, requires stepping out of the comfort zone. learning to do something new, whether you're learning to swim, learning to speak a foreign language, learning to draw, if you're not naturally artistically inclined, learning to do anything, you're going to be terrible when you start. It's going to be difficult. It's going to be uncomfortable. I speak several languages to varying degrees of proficiency. None of them are as good as my English. But when I'm speaking in Spanish and Japanese and Italian, just because it's not as comfortable or not as good as my English, it's not me being inauthentic. So where we say, well, that's not me, in that meaning I don't want to try, I don't want to get good, you're just holding yourself back, and you're using the label of authenticity as some sort of get out of jail free card. And it's really just an excuse to not grow. But when you realize, no, that I want to be good at that. I want to learn that skill. Like the client that I spoke to you about who learned not just to not hate public speaking, but to love it. She found herself. She found her voice. She found her passion, and she loved being able to address audiences and give them as much value. Had she said to herself, well, I don't do public speaking. That's not me. I got to be me. I got to be authentic. And that's my authentic self, as someone who hates and is terrible at public speaking. Oh my gosh, the self-imposed limits personally and professionally that she would have stuck herself with for the rest of her life, instead of saying, I'm going to get out of my own way. Help me get good at this and help me learn to love it. Little uncomfortable in the learning curve? Yes, learning curves are uncomfortable. Get over it. Get over yourself in it and find the joy and the power that she found in a newer, most wonderful version of herself that was 100% authentic. So I really hope that this inspires people today, that our conversation gives them a little boost of courage, a little boost of inspiration to expand their sense of authenticity and identity in a way that brings joy and value to themselves and others moving forward.
That was a bit of a mic drop moment that we can finish off the conversation, because I've heard so many people say, that's not me. I know I've said it in the past, and while I don't think that I use it very often because I like to push the edge of my comfort zone, I have said it, and I've never stopped to think, how limiting is that phrase, and how much does it close you off from who you could be? Because we evolve all the time. So even if that wasn't me at one point, why can't it be me now? Because I feel inspired to move towards that.
Yes. Yes. Perfect summary. Thank you.
Well, before I let you go, I'd love to do the Leaders Lane sprint with you,
Okay.
which is 4 quick fire questions. So my first question for you is, what is one of the best experiences that you've had in life?
Oh, that's a big one. I went just a couple of years ago. I had the opportunity to go to Italy for 2 weeks with my son, who was finishing college. And we got to meet some of my husband's family that was still over there that none of us had ever met before. And it was really wonderful to connect my son with his bloodline and to have that great experience. None of them spoke any English. It was a great opportunity for language and culture and food and connection, and just such a beautiful gift to both of us.
I had goosebumps when you were sharing that story. Okay, tell me, what or who brings out your best?
My kids definitely bring out my best. I think that's a pretty standard mom line, so not to be completely generic about it. When you love someone, that naturally brings out the best. But at the same time, honestly, I love being on a stage. I love being in front of an audience, and when I can feel the energy of the crowd and I get people going and laughing and cheering and doing all those kinds of things, I definitely feed off of that energy, and I can't wait to feed it back.
Love that. All right, tell me, what's one thing that you'd like to do before you die?
I would like to just spend a year eating my way around the world. I love food. I'm a
Wow.
foodie, and I would just love to have the freedom to just country by country, city by city, just eat my way across the world.
That is one of the coolest answers that I've heard. Honestly, I love it. It's so good. Thank you for sharing that with me. Okay, my final question for you today is, what did you enjoy most about this conversation?
I loved just getting to dig in, I love getting to share stories, to share my stories of clients' successes, because it's not just about, well, I had this personal success, where someone listening might say, well, but Laura, that's you. Remember that's not me piece. Oh, that's just you. You're naturally comfortable at speaking. You're naturally gifted in this way, or et cetera. You're confident in these areas. So I can't relate. So I'm not going to take your advice. When I get to share client success stories. It's not me, it's them, but you see what's possible. And I pray that it truly inspires listeners and gives them hope that maybe it can be you too.
Beautiful. Well, thank you so much for giving me the end of your day and to talk to us. And I've got so much from this conversation, and I hope that our listeners will take away a few golden nuggets that they can apply to their lives as well. So thank you for joining me.
It was my pleasure. And may I actually offer a little gift to your listeners?
Absolutely, you may.
If it is something that they would enjoy, I would love to offer the first 2 chapters of my book, Speaking to Influence, Mastering Your Leadership Voice. And I'll give a link that we can put in the show notes so nobody needs to pull the car over and try to write down a URL right now. And I would invite anyone who wants it just to come and download it for free. So more tips like what we talked about today.
Amazing. Yes, I'm sure everyone would love that, and we'll coordinate that and make that happen.
Wonderful.
So thank you for your generous gift.
My pleasure.